Well, today I'm going to be continuing in the book of Mark. And we unfortunately don't have the verses to put up on the screen, so I will be in chapter 3. And chapter 3, I'm just going to jump right into it. Is in verse 1, it says, "And he," that is Jesus, "entered again into the synagogue, and there was a man there which had a withered hand." Now, I had a friend who had a withered hand, and unfortunately, when you have a withered hand, it makes it so it's very difficult to use it at all. And there are some ailments where it's not visible. But there are other ailments to where it is very visible, and where upon its healing, it's evidence better than any other evidence. Because there are certain illnesses and certain problems that our eyes can't see whether they were there or whether they were healed or anything like that. But there are others that are impossible to even hide, and then impossible to fake afterwards. The withered hand is one of them. It says there was a man there which had a withered hand, which, first of all, good choice for him. He went to the synagogue. That's the right place to be. And they watched him. This is the scoffers. Whether he, Jesus, would heal him on the Sabbath day, that they might accuse him. Now, notice that they're thinking, oh, he might heal this man. Let's use it against him. Using his good deed, his good intentions, against him. Do we see that nowadays? And Jesus saith, he saith unto the man which had the withered hand, "Stand forth." He's asking him to come forward. And he saith unto them, that is the scoffers, "Is it lawful to do good on the Sabbath days, or to do evil, to save life, or to kill?" But they held their peace. See, he's, again, telling the intentions of their hearts and addressing them already beforehand, saying, is it unlawful to do good? He's asking, which is it lawful to do, good or evil? Are they going to say it's unlawful to do good on the Sabbath? They had no reply because, obviously, they have no stance or using legalities. And when he had looked round about on them with anger, being grieved for the hardness of their hearts, he saith unto the man, "Stretch forth thine hand." And just before I show the response, let's just imagine this. He's standing among all these scoffers getting ready to accuse him, and he can tell in their hearts that they're about to take his act of goodness and use it against him in the name of God. We don't often see Jesus being given an emotion. But here we do. He has anger. He's angry. He is grieved for the hardness of their hearts. Now, we often think of Jesus as the loving, all-forgiving one. And yes, He's willing to forgive all sins. But they're not repentant. They're not asking forgiveness. They're here getting ready to attack good deeds. But He says, He saith unto the man, "Stretch forth thine hand." And he stretched it out, and his hand was restored whole as the other. So his hand is restored just like the other. That's something you can't fake. I don't even think you could fake it nowadays. Just saying, "Stretch forth thine hand," and it's made whole. And for those who don't know, with withering of the hands, it often involves a shrinkage. It looks much smaller than other body parts. Becomes unable to move. So not only is he stretching forth his hand, showing that it's now able to move, but it's restored whole. So here he does a miracle on the Sabbath. Now, if I had a miracle done, I would be very grateful. If I saw a person doing a miracle, even if I didn't receive it, I would be grateful. But that's not how the Pharisees responded. It says, "And the Pharisees went forth and straightway took counsel with the Herodians against him, how they might destroy him." Now, you don't see references to the Herodians very often But the Herodians were one of the worst groups. They were a powerful, influential group that generally sought destruction from I don't want to say the Judaism, because they didn't seek to destroy all Judaism, but anybody who sought change, any reformer, your Martin Luthers of the day. And they may not have seen Jesus as the Messiah for who he was, but they definitely saw him as a challenge to their authority. These were the followers of Herod, many of which were Herod's own family. Now, just for reference, this is not the Herod at Jesus' birth. This is, I believe, his grandson. This is not Herod the Great, but this is what the Bible calls the other Herod. They had the lineage of Herods. But they took counsel with the Herodians. Now, why the Pharisees would go to them rather than seeking counsel from the Word or from, say, the Sadducees, which the Sadducees weren't the supportive ones of Jesus either, but at least they followed the religion. The Herodians were a form of authoritarian followers of the government, not of the religion. But they sought counsel from the Herodians that how they might destroy him, seeking a way to destroy Jesus. But Jesus withdrew himself with his disciples to the sea, and a great multitude from Galilee followed him, and from Judea. Now this is him moving away. Jesus is always aware of dangers, and when it says they sought how to destroy him, it's implied that was an immediate destruction that they were seeking. They were seeking to immediately attack and oppress or crush Jesus. But here he is, he's got a great multitude from Galilee. And they all come to the sea. A great multitude from Galilee followed him, and from Judea, and from Jerusalem, and from Idumea, and from beyond Jordan, and they about Tyre and Sidon. A great multitude, when they had heard what great things he did, came unto him. Now, this is incredible. Now, the region is geographically small in comparison to the United States, but in terms of traveling distance and people and the amount of people that would be stuck in a small area, this would be similar to people from San Francisco and people from Boston all coming to see the same person speak. I can't think of a single person besides your modern celebrities who draw that level of crowd. And even most celebrities nowadays will go to different cities because they won't get anyone from outside the state. So he's getting people from Galilee and from Judea, but also from Jerusalem, from Idumea, and from beyond Jordan, and they about Tyre. Now Tyre is incredibly far away. Tyre was a global center. And Idumea was a place where the Edomites used to be. So that was a group that would have traditionally hated Jesus. They would have traditionally hated not only Jesus, but all of the people of Israel. They were enemies of Israel. But here there are people from Jerusalem and from Idumea and from beyond Jordan and from Tyre and Sidon. This is all over the near world for them. A great multitude, when they had heard what great things he did, they came unto him. They understood that he had power. And he came to his disciples, he spake to his disciples, a small ship should wait on him because of the multitude, lest they should throng him. So he's, to put it plainly, getting a getaway ship ready. Now, it's not likely that he thinks that all of the crowd or the people who came because they loved him were going to do this. But as we mentioned, the Herodians and the Pharisees were working together, figuring out a way to destroy him. If they could somehow get this massive crowd to turn against him, they could easily crush him. They could easily oppress him. That is, of course, under his human limitations. And it says, because of the multitude, lest they should throng him. For he had healed many, insomuch that they pressed upon him for to touch him, as many as had plagues. These people are desperate. They've heard his miracles. They've done great things. This is why he told men before not to speak of what he had done. Because it gets to a point where it gets dangerous. It gets troubling. But here it says in verse 11 something very interesting. It says, and unclean spirits, when they saw him, fell down before him and cried, saying, Thou art the Son of God. So this is many of them recognizing, because they're spirits. They're from beyond. They're not from this world. They recognize who he is. They say, Thou art the Son of God. But these are unclean spirits. Even the demons believe and tremble. It's not simply about head knowledge. But Jesus' response is, and he straightly charged them, that they should not make him known. Now that is again very different to most people nowadays. You see your celebrities out there, they say all publicity is good publicity. They want their name to be known. They want the world to know about them. Would any modern doctor who is going out doing all these great things not want people to call him a miracle worker? And doctors, they are generally selfless. They work for hours on some surgeries. Sometimes days on end. But even I don't imagine any one of them who healed someone of a heart attack or of a stroke would say, Don't tell anybody I did this. Jesus had no desire in being lifted up at that moment. See, Jesus didn't come down to earth to be lifted up. He was already sitting on a throne on high. He chose to come down here. And people knowing who he is would just cause more problems. If he was already having problems, they pressed upon him for to touch him, as many as had plagues. Them knowing that he's the Son of God would just cause more problems. And he goeth up into a mountain, and calleth unto him whom he would, and they came unto him. Now, Matthew lets us know that this was 200 disciples. Jesus had roughly 200 disciples following him. We always hear the 12 disciples, but the 12 were selected out of 200. Jesus did not have a small following. And it says, and calleth unto him whom he would, and they came unto him. And he ordained 12, that they should be with him, and that he might send them forth to preach, and to have power to heal sicknesses, and to cast out devils. So here's where he names the 12. We always call them the 12 disciples, but the Bible just calls them the 12. It was an easy way to remember them. So he picked these, and he picked them all for specific reasons, one which I'm sure on time to explain tonight, but I can explain a few. It says he gave them the power to heal sicknesses and to cast out devils, and we see that all in the book of Acts. And Simon, he surnamed Peter, or Cephas, meaning the rock. And James, the son of Zebedee, and James, the son of and John, the brother of James, he surnamed them Boanerges, which is the sons of thunder. That is in Aramaic. And Andrew and Philip and Bartholomew and Matthew and Thomas and James, the son of Alphaeus and Thaddeus and Simon the Canaanite. Now, I do want to clarify something here, because when I was reading through here studying, it seems to be a mistranslation. It says Simon the Canaanite. The word here is Canaanian. It's the Greek word Canaanian, which the King James translators seem to view as Canaanite. But the word actually is shown several other places in the Bible, and it refers to zealots. Kanya meaning zeal. These refer to a specific group of people called zealots. And the zealots were those who, I guess we call them revolutionaries now. kind of like the Minutemen in the Revolutionary War. They were those who were seeking to use power to overthrow the government. Now, that's not to say that Simon was in any way like some other zealots, because there were some very awful zealots, some that didn't desire anything of God and just wanted to overthrow the government. Simon was clearly picked for a reason. But I did want to mention that if you look in most Greek lexicons, when you see Canaanian, it doesn't say Canaanite. It gives a different picture of Simon, and it doesn't really represent who he would have been, especially given Israel's history with the Canaanites. It's said to have been from the same region except for Judas. Judas is the only non-local, hence why it tells you where Judas is from. He's from Kirioth. And Judas had a similar background to Matthew. We don't see it in this book, in the book of Mark, but Judas and Matthew were both, they both worked with money. Matthew was a tax collector, and I believe it mentions that Judas was an accountant of sorts. And he was the accountant for the disciples. He would keep track of the money. It completely separates him. And here Mark once mentioned right from the start, which also betrayed him. He gives all these other things that Simon is surnamed Peter, he's the rock, and James and John are the sons of thunder. And the other James is the son of Alphaeus. And they go into all these, and they mention this one is a zealot. But Judas, he says, which also betrayed him. Now, why would God pick Judas? Why would God pick Judas at all? Well, Judas, in a way, and this is something you'll find, and I recommend everybody to look into the names behind all of the disciples. They all had a meaning behind them. It's actually why Jesus would pick many with the same name. But Judas isn't the only Judas in the Gospels. There's another Judas. I don't recall his last name, but there's Judas Iscariot, and then there's the other Judas. Now, here is God using names to show this. And this is coming from, I believe it's John MacArthur. He was the first one to point out to me that Judas represented Judea. When you look into his name, it actually is spelled Judaias. And Judea is spelled Judaia in the Greek. We have two Judases, and we have one that stayed loyal to Jesus and one that didn't. And the one that didn't was replaced by the apostle to the Gentiles. See, God went all his way out of the way to bring one from Kirioth. And this is not to say, and I don't want anyone to misinterpret this is not to say that this is not a true historical event. This is to say that God adds meanings into what he works together more than just the plain factual nature of them. But when God picked his different disciples, he picked the rock, who would end up being steady for the church even after denying. John was the last proclaimer of the gospel, who proclaimed it across one gospel, 3 epistles, and the book of Revelation. And James ended up also proclaiming the gospel strongly and being the foremost head at the council in Jerusalem. And every single one of these would end up dying a martyr's death. God picked each and every one for a reason, and when you look into their names, you see a little bit about their character. And what Judas' name shows is that he was just like Judea. John chapter 1 says he came into his own, and his own received him not. But to as many as received him, to them he gave the power to become the sons of God. Judas has the name borne by the tribe that Jesus descended from, yet he himself betrayed Jesus. All of them were Galileans, but Judas was the outsider. See, we see a lot of things about Jesus in just this passage, in this chapter 3. But the thing that I think stands out the most is just how intentional Jesus is with everything. Jesus will address those who take his actions as good and use them against him. But he doesn't attack them. He takes a man that he knew would betray him, and he brings him along into his group. Everything that he did to achieve the ultimate goal. See, if he did not do this, if he did not say what he said, if he did not directly prod and poke at the Pharisees, what he said was truth, but he was prodding and poking at the Pharisees, showing them, you are working against God. If he had not done that, they wouldn't have conspired with the Herodians. And if they didn't conspire with the Herodians, they would have never bribed Judas. And if Jesus hadn't gotten Judas, there would have been no one to bribe. Matthew wouldn't have denounced Jesus. Peter would denounce him but wouldn't betray him. Peter was ready with a sword during the betrayal. Jesus did everything that if you were a politician you would say never do. Don't make a group of people that you know are going to betray you. Don't needlessly prod at the people with authority, with power to kill you. But Jesus wasn't doing what other messiahs were doing. They sought to hide, they sought to garner power and to make friends with those in authority. Jesus didn't come to become famous. Jesus didn't come to gain notoriety. Jesus didn't come to be loved. Jesus didn't come to be protected. Jesus came to be destroyed, to be betrayed, to be despised, to be hated. And as hard as it is to say, Jesus came to be rejected. Jesus didn't come here to be the one whom everyone loves. And most of the churches who preach a Jesus that everyone loves, there's a problem. Because if you're out there in the world and you don't have Jesus, it makes sense for you to hate what Jesus preaches. Jesus preaches grace. Well, what do I need grace for? Because you're a sinner. Because you're a filthy sinner. No one wants to hear that they're a filthy sinner, and Jesus never said, you're as pure as snow. Jesus says that He will make you pure as snow, which what does that tell you about what you are now? He didn't come to be loved. This is not to say we shouldn't love Him, but He didn't come to be loved. He's not like anyone we can compare Him to. I can't compare Him to a single person. You take any politician, I don't care how good they are, they're not going to go out there trying to turn votes. You take your doctors. You take even most pastors. They do not come out to be hated. But Jesus came here to be hated. Jesus came here to be rejected. Jesus came here to be betrayed. And every choice He made was intentional. And what message He sent was this. You see, he said, the system that you have right now, your power, your conspiring with the Herodians, everything you have, and using the law in ways that should never be used. And you over here, Judas, you who bear the name of the very land that you stand in, even you aren't a representative of who you bear the name of. Judas didn't represent Judah, and that's actually the name he likely had. Though that's too confusing to switch it out now, but his name likely was Judah. Because we see Zacharias is the name Zechariah. Isaiah is Isaiah. He bore the name of Judah, and Jesus came from the tribe of Judah. Yet Jesus became our Savior, and Judas became the traitor. This shows one great thing, is it doesn't matter how religious you are. It doesn't matter to how much power and authority you have. It doesn't matter what name you have, be it Pharisee, be it Herodian, or even be it Judah. And it doesn't even matter if you know up here that Jesus is the Son of God. What matters is that you follow Him. Some came to Him because they had plagues. Some came to Him because He was going to change the world. Some came to Him because they wanted to destroy Him because He was changing the world. But how many of them came to Him because they wanted Him? Because they wanted to hear what He had. Be it those who were in good with the government. Be it people who know that Jesus is the Son of God. Be it a disciple. Or even be it someone who bears their family name of righteousness. None of those save us unless we truly follow Him. None of those save us if we still reject Him. And I believe this firmly. And this is a debate that could be had any time, but even Peter himself didn't seem to have that rock-solid faith until after Jesus was resurrected. So we don't have to be John. I wish I could say that I would be a John, but I can't say with certainty that I would be. But I pray that I would at least be a Peter. That even if at one time I denied Jesus, that I recognize that. And I turn back. Because I don't think I would love, and I pray that I would be a John if the situation happened. That I would stand there by the cross. But all that I pray is that I'm at least not a Judas. That I'm at least not a Pharisee. That I never take good and do evil into it. And that's where it started. That's where our reading started, and that's where our reading ended. It's with people who saw good and sought to do evil against it. But with that being said, if there's anyone out there who at this time doesn't follow Jesus, doesn't have that trust in Jesus, I invite you to come forward. The altar is open. It doesn't matter that fear, if there's any fear in your heart about where you're going to end up. I promise you, Christ can give you that hope. Christ can let you know where you're going. And even if you have that faith and you trust in God, but maybe you don't have that assurance right now. Maybe you've been struggling to find that assurance. Maybe you believe, truly believe and trust in God that you have that assurance, but you're asking the Lord to remind you. You're asking the Lord to bring that up here. Sometimes it's up here but not down here, but unfortunately sometimes it's here but it's not up here. You live and you do trust the Lord, but you keep getting these doubts. There are many Christians who have doubts. There are many Christians who have fears. There are many Christians who have struggles. But what we do at that moment is we get down on our knees and we pray. And if you get down on your knees and pray, or if you go to a friend or a loved one or a church or someone you trust or just anyone, a man on the street, if you pray, the Lord will hear you. But at this time, the altar is open. I invite you to come as we sing.